Okay, so first I'm making the tomato red pepper sauce. I'm just adding the tomatoes into the jug, ready to be blended. And here is the bay leaves and guinea hen weed. The guinea hen weed gives it a garlicky flavor. I prefer not to use garlic, but you can just add garlic. Don't use the guinea hen weed if you're pregnant either. And then you see I just added some onion, and I'm adding some red pepper here. I just roughly chopped them. The blender that I've got blends them pretty good. But if you've got a different kind of blender, you may need to chop them more. Then you see I added the salt in there, and I'm adding some thyme. I would have loved to have added some basil and oregano, but I didn't have any in stock that day. And then I added in some smoked paprika. You can leave that out if you're following the Sabi food guide. Okay, next I'm just adding some hatch peppers. These were left over that I had in my freezer from when they were in season. You can add a different hot pepper like cayenne or habanero, or leave it out if you prefer for it not to be too spicy. Then I've got some juniper berries from my yard. Again, you don't have to add these, it's more for nutrition. Now you can see the tomato sauce after I blended it all up in the Vitamix. Next I'm making the creamy cheesy sauce. First, I add in a few tomatoes. Then I'm adding some onion. The next thing is the sunflower seeds. You could use something like hemp seeds instead. These are just cheaper for me right now. Then I add some smoked paprika. Again, you don't need to add that. I just prefer how it tastes with that flavor. Then I'm adding some salt into this. This is all just going into my Vitamix jug, by the way. I should have probably showed that. Then I'm using some nutritional yeast here. You don't have to use the yeast, but I like it because it adds that extra cheesy flavor. Then here I've got some soaked sea moss. Here you can see what it looks like. I'm adding that in for extra nutrition, and it also helps to make the sauce slightly thicker. Okay, so you see my toddler is insisting on helping with me again. Okay, so then again, I've got some hatch peppers going in. I like the sauce a little spicy. You can add a different type of hot pepper or leave it out if you don't want anything spicy. Then all I'm doing is blending it up in my Vitamix, and you can see the sauce here after it's blended up. Okay, so now time for the layers. So the bottom layer is going to be the tomato sauce. You want to make sure you have enough to cover the whole bottom. Here you go, so I'm just spreading it out. And then you put the squash layers in. The squash, I actually show you how I chop this after this because I had to chop a bit more for the other dish I was making of this as well. I should have really shown you beforehand, but I forgot to record myself chopping that part. Okay, and then you see I'm adding in the creamy cheesy sauce. And I've got my toddler helping me with this. I would have preferred it if I was only using the bigger pieces of squash because it just presents better when you take it out the pan later. But with him helping me, it made it much harder to just use small pieces because he kept insisting I use the smaller pieces. Okay, so here you go. I'm adding some more tomato sauce. You can make as many layers as you want. Now, you can make this into more of a traditional style lasagna where you can add in mushrooms. I make another raw lasagna, and that gives you a good idea of a different type of filling to put in. You could add chickpeas with the mushrooms, or you could add in lentils if you eat lentils. I've got a version where I use black rice that you'll see in the other video. And here you can see I'm just adding more of the cheese sauce. Now, something I did learn with this is you always want to finish this with the top layer with the cheese sauce. I did it one time with the top layer with the tomato sauce, and it just doesn't hold together as good, and it just doesn't taste as good. It's nice when the cheese sauce is nicely browned on top. And actually, I don't show myself here finishing with the cheese layer. You're seeing me finishing with the tomato layer, and I needed to add on the cheese layer afterwards because I had to go chop up a bit more squash to have some nice big pieces to put on top. Really, this was more something I made. There was a cheaper meal, just something to use up the squash, a little bit more inventive than the other meals I'd been making with squash. It wasn't really something I was intending to make as a lasagna. It could work really good as kind of like a side dish. I mean, even if you eat meat, it could be a side dish to your meat or a side dish to your delicious vegan meal. You don't have to make this as a lasagna. And as I say, if you want to make it as a lasagna, then you can add in the extra ingredients to add the extra texture that you're normally more accustomed to, but it really does taste delicious as it is, and it keeps it nice and simple and easy. So you can see I'm now peeling the squash. You see, this is how I do the squash pieces that I use like lasagna sheets. You can use a mandolin slicer also. That works pretty good. I do sometimes use that, but I don't really like using that when I have my toddler around because it's so sharp and I don't want him putting his fingers on it and cutting them. The knife I'm using really isn't very sharp, so it's a whole lot safer when my toddler's around trying to stick his fingers in the way and stuff. So yeah, so you can see I just chop them into nice thin slices. Then being nice and thin helps it cook a lot faster. If it's too thick, then it's going to take a lot longer to cook, and it just won't taste quite as pleasant that way. Once it's all done, I just put it in the oven and cook it until the squash seems fairly soft. I can test it by putting a knife in and seeing how soft it is. Here you go. This is what it looks like when it comes out the oven, all nicely browned on top. That's how I normally prefer it because I find the kind of cheesy sauce mix is nice that way. Here you go. Here you can see it when it comes out, the layers, all the different layers in there. And then I just showed a picture of it all plated up. It's not very pretty. I do it pretty fast because I have 6 of us that are all waiting to eat. I just served this with some greens and some extra squash I chopped up that I had left over. I just fried it a little bit with a tiny bit of oil and a little bit of sauce so it tasted good. I hope you liked the video. Let me know what else you'd like to see. Please don't forget to subscribe because we've got a lot more videos coming soon. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you. Goodbye.